It's February 24th, 2022. Can we take a roll call, please?
Yes. Director Roberson?
Here.
Director Anderson?
I'm here and I
Director Malik?
move my computer. I'm having a little coverage here, so I'll be back shortly.
Director Malik? Director Riley?
Here.
Director Edwards?
Here.
Vice Chair Adams?
Here.
Chair Paul?
Here.
Let the record reflect that all directors are present with the exception of Director Malik.
Thank you, Joel. Your sound is a little bit fuzzy. We could hear you, but it was a little bit muffled. Maybe your mask.
Yes, all directors are present with the exception of Director Malik.
Thank you. Let's time for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The internet's not working, George, not in my room.
Did we hear a problem from Director Anderson?
Oh, sorry. Sorry. I'm resetting up.
Okay.
Perhaps you'd want to mute yourself, Amy. Thank you.
That's a good idea. So now it's time for oral communications at this time in the meeting for members of the public who would like to address the board on the items on the consent calendar.
Madam Chair, just to interject, the previous item was additions or corrections. We do recognize that a corrected agenda was sent out to the recipient list, but just in case people are working off of the prior one, there were changes made, excuse me, to consent items 1 and 7. And then also item 18 under action and the closed session item 1.1, which was also added via supplemental distribution. Thank you. Oh, and Joel, would you move Mike McCullough over?
Got it.
Thanks. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, any other corrections to the agenda? And none of these corrections require pulling anything from the consent calendar, I take it?
They do not.
No, okay. All right, now let's take it out to the public for oral communications.
Yes, at this time, the board asks for any public comment on the consent calendar, information items, closed session items, or matters not listed on the agenda. You may do so by raising your hand, or if you're calling in, push *9. And at this time, Sarah, do you have the timer that you could share with our board? Great. So at this time, I would like to invite John to lead. John, when you're ready, please present your comments.
Thank you. I would just like to ask if item 29, which is the monthly water supply and California American Water Production Report, if that could be brought earlier into discussions tonight and the public so that the greatest number of people can hear about this item and that we can hear the board discuss it. Thank you very much. That's all.
Oh.
All right, next we have Anna Thompson. Anna, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Yes, I would like to express my gratitude to the chair, directors, general manager, council, and staff for your outstanding service to our community. I appreciate your knowledge, strong leadership, and your commitment to always do what is in the best interest of our communities. Not an easy task, having to also deal with CalAM's obstruction and disinformation tactics. Unfortunately, despite all the evidence to the contrary, CalAM has done a good job in convincing some individuals and businesses that our community is best served by CalAM and not by this water district. I also assume that many families, being very occupied with making a living and managing their personal lives, might not be aware of CalAM's mode of operandi. I think they might easily be misled by whatever CalAM's clever brochures and letters say. Yesterday, I read CalAM's latest correspondence to the customers regarding CalAM's activities and approach to address water shortages. This letter is so misleading that if I did not know any better, I too might believe that CalAM is a good provider worth keeping. I would like to remind 20 CalAM supporters some of the facts. CalAM has owned the Peninsula's water delivery system for over half a century, but it is the Monterey Peninsula Water District that has successfully developed several supply projects for the peninsula, including the Pure Water Monterey project, which allows CalAM to stop its illegal overdrafting of the Carmel River. CalAM has obstructed the development of the Pure Water Monterey expansion for several years. By now, this project will be delivering enough water to at least 2,250 acre-feet per year, and if CalAM had not obstructed enough, this would have been enough water to build our reserves and future growth. CalAM is still promoting an oversized desalination plant, which is neither economically or environmentally feasible. There is no benefit whatsoever having a monopoly controlling our water. CalAM's profit motive conflicts with our community's best interest. What benefit or advantage is CalAM providing that the district will not be able to provide otherwise? CalAM has done nothing for us other than the highest water costs and obstruction of having the good water supply projects being developed. We will not want to continue to have CalAM. Is somebody asked to answer what benefit is there? Otherwise, we don't need a monopoly. So thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comments, Anna.
Sarah, you can stop the screen share now. I do not see anybody else with their hands raised, so I'll return this back to the board.
Now I believe we're going to hear from Mike McCullough, who is going to present an award that Pure Water Monterey received. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you
Chair
for
Hall. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. Just wanted to provide this award to the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District. We were recently selected at the February 3rd virtual celebration from the American Council of Engineering Companies. We were in the honor award category for engineering excellence, and we were along with 16 other projects throughout the state of California, and ranging from transportation, water resources, structural systems to energy. They had different categories, and we were in the water resources one. When you're in the honor award category, those 16 projects are eligible for the Golden State Award, which is kind of like the best project throughout the state. We had some pretty stiff competition. In the honor award category, there was the East Bay Bus Rapid Transit Project, the seismic retrofit in San Francisco, and then BART Silicon Valley Phase 1 project, the Salinas Intermodal Transportation Center, and Salinas was also awarded. But then there was just a little project called the SoFi Stadium. And unfortunately, we lost the Golden State Awards to SoFi Stadium to host the Super Bowl 56. So, you know, we've done a lot in our community, but I guess a $5 billion project trumps our little $120 million water project. So what I'm just here to thank the Water Management District's continued support, you know, along with our project partners, not only the district, but also Marina Coast Water District. We brought this project from conceptual planning to operation in 7 years, and that's just phenomenal time frame. Later this month, I think we'll be crossing the 5,900 acre-foot barrier of water that's been injected into the ground in less than 2 years, or right at 2 years. So we think that's another milestone that's really important. So Dave, I'm going to pass my award on to you from ACEC. So appreciate the district support and as we get recognized from our industry partners. And so Dave, do you have your award there with you?
Well, just hand it to me through the screen, Mike.
Okay, well, here it comes.
Oh, thank you. I'll take that.
Well done.
So this will be in our lobby for customers as well as board members and interested parties to see. It's a heavy piece. It's not the first award that Pure Water Monterey has received. It's among several, and we're still under consideration for an American Society of Civil Engineering Award. I should point out that in addition to the honor awards, of which there were 16 here in California, there were also what are called merit awards and commendation or commended awards. And the merit and commended categories are about 60 other smaller, less recognized projects. So being singled out in that group of 16, along with SoFi Stadium, as Mike pointed out, the site of the Super Bowl, I think this community should be very proud for where it's going. So this will be downstairs. Stop by and polish it.
So on one more note, Chair Paul, last night we had the opportunity to go to the American Public Works Association Monterey Bay Chapter Award Dinner, and the Pure Water Monterey project received the environmental award for the $25 to $75 million range for Pure Water Monterey. And so we received another plaque last night for the project. And so, as Dave said, we're just really honored to, have this project available for our community. It takes a village. The last night it was mainly about all the contractors and the companies that helped us build this project. But, it takes, the public, it takes, the member entities that we have on our board and your board that are represented to make this project successful. So we're humbled that we've been able to get these awards, but we're just grateful that we're able to support our community in this way. So thank you for letting me present this to you tonight.
And
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair,
Yes.
I just wanted to advise you that you do have a hand raised by one member of the public, Eric Tynan.
Okay. It'll be just a moment maybe before we call on him, because I want to thank you, Mike, and congratulate you and all the staff of all the agency, your agency and the Water Management District, and to the extent Marina Coast Water District collaborated, them too, all these agencies and all the staff that worked. It is very, very gratifying that the community not only has this desperately needed resource, but that it's been acknowledged and this way as a example of a environmentally sustainable, environmentally friendly resource that I'm sure other communities are probably gonna follow and try and do something similar. So please convey our thanks to all the staff that you work with at Monterey One Water, and would other directors or Dave like to say anything to Mike? George, please.
Well, I'd like to thank Mike and Monterey One Water and Dave Stoll for what they've done, but I think it's worth remembering a little bit of history. The Reclaimed Water Project was being discussed in the early 2000s, 2005, 6, 7, 8, and couldn't get any traction. And at that time, it was competing obviously with desal. So the people who believed in it didn't stop working on it. And that's been just wonderful, because it was 2011, I think, or maybe 12, that finally Cal-Am recognized that this is a valuable component of a water project. And so that took years to get Cal-Am to that position. And now it's even grown beyond that. So I'm just very impressed with the effort. I'm very impressed with the awards. I'm even more impressed with the grants that come to the project. So thank you both and thank you all.
You bet. Thanks, George.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, George. Anyone else wish to say anything before Mike leaves us? Well, thank you again, Mike. Congratulations to you and and it's inspiring. And you've done something, we've done something really, really important. The project may be small compared to the bigger ones that won the top prizes, but it's big to this community.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that, you know, I'm doing this on behalf of Paul Shudo. So he couldn't be here tonight to present this himself, but you know, I'm in his stead. So our staff is grateful and appreciative of all the support that we've gotten from the district staff and Marina Coast staff, City of Salinas, City of Seaside. As I said, it takes a village, and we've definitely stumbled upon a recipe for success, and we look forward to continuing that.
Yeah, and thankfully the different agencies were able to work together. Without that, it couldn't have happened. So wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Our general counsel reminded us there is a raised hand.
I believe that hand has come down, so it's no longer
Okay.
relevant.
Okay. All right. So now we have a consent calendar. Does anybody wish to pull anything from the consent calendar?
Could I ask the GM to explain what was added to the agenda based on the earlier comments about the agenda modification? Just to explain
right. So, Joelle, you'll have to tell me what was in item 1. It was a revision to the minutes.
Yes, for item number 1, I did provide a clean set of meeting minutes for the January 21st and January 27th meeting, along with red line version. And then for item number 7, that was simply a title change. So it now reads as Review Annual Disclosure Statement of Employee Board Reimbursement for fiscal year 2020-2021. So those were the only changes that were made to the consent calendar.
And my only real concern was around
Yes.
item 7, but since you've clarified that, that's the only
It
reason
was
I asked.
just the year. Yeah.
I move approval of the consent. Well, unless you got to go to the public first, but I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, well, we can go to the public first to see if there are any members of the public that want to, well, they had the opportunity to speak to the consent calendar earlier, so I think we can entertain your motion, George.
I move approval of consent calendar as modified by the GM.
Second that?
Thank you. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Director Malik, absent. Director Roberson,
Aye.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Vice Chair Adams,
Aye.
Chair Paul.
Yes,
The motion passes.
very good. General Manager's report.
Great. I will screen share for item 11. And this is mismarked item 12. It's actually item 11 on the revised agenda. And this does address Mr. Tilley's item 29 question more in tables and graphics, but it is related to water supply compliance.
Mhm.
This chart shows just the Monterey Peninsula water resource system, actual versus target. And you can see, generally speaking, we're below our target, which is again based on the quarterly water budget that we go through and adopt every 3 months. And these are the projects kind of outside of that area. You can see ASR, there's been zero recovery from ASR, but to date, there's been 71 acre feet injected into ASR. So right now, we're sitting on just under 1,300 acre feet of, call it drought protection or water in the ground that has not been accessed in the last year and a half. Pure Water Monterey recovery, you heard good numbers on that from Mike during the earlier discussion. And you can see through about a third of the year, we're on track for that 3,500 acre feet of deliveries. The company will be increasing their withdrawals from Pure Water Monterey here as we head into the next several months. And then I just want to highlight that we actually have Table 13 water rights. This is usually 0 in a drought. So it's reflective of some of the rain that we've had to date, generally speaking. And then Sand City has only contributed a couple of acre feet this last month, but because demand, as you'll see in the next slide, is lower even this year than last year, the company only has to leverage what resources it has, and occasionally it doesn't need to take as much, let's say, from Sand City. Now, this chart does show basically production for customer service through 1/3 of the water year. And as I pointed out, it is below last year by 180 acre feet at this point. And even last month, it was better than the prior year by 162 acre feet. So we're not backsliding, we're actually gaining some ground relative. But we're still in a year that's affected by COVID, so we don't really know what the demand numbers mean this year and last year compared to prior years, even though we've done some analysis of it. On rainfall, we're at 86% of long-term average, and that's mostly because of the dry January and the relatively dry February that we've had. But it did rain a little bit just a couple days ago. You can see right there, here's about 4/10 of an inch up in the watershed. So for those of you who only got about 5 minutes of rain down here right at the coast, we had a little bit lengthier up in the watershed. And then Carmel River flows are also at 86% of long-term average. And that's primarily because the lack of February and there should be a little bit of annual in February, but this chart is only showing through the end of January. So that's why you don't see a bar there. But the lack of January kind of offset the great December that we had. So stay tuned on that. We're hoping for a wet March. And that concludes item 11. On item 12, hold on a second. There we go. On item 12, I just want to highlight a couple of things on water supply. In January 11th, CalIM filed a response to the California Coastal Commission on their notice of incomplete relative to the desalination project. The Coastal Commission responded on February 8th, saying that the response was still deficient on several areas, specifically with respect to the outfall modifications, some project and permit descriptions, future intake well locations, and some ongoing vernal pool data monitoring. So we'll continue to follow that. And then on Pure Water Monterey, two things. We will be seeing water injected to new deep injection well number 3 in the next several days, probably the beginning of next week. And then deep injection well 4 should follow shortly thereafter. So we're pretty much on schedule for that. It was predicted as late February, which is a positive. And then the CPUC application on the water purchase agreement, there was a scoping memo that came out February 9th, which seems to push the, testimony from the district will happen March 11th. But if you follow the schedule that they've laid out, we won't see a proposed decision until late September or mid-October. So that's the earliest we'll be able to affirm that we've got approval to move forward with the water purchase agreement. And that concludes my report on water supply projects, item 12. And I guess we can move on to item 13. I'll screen share again. I know we've got a lengthy agenda, but I'll try to get through this relatively quickly. Sorry, cleaning crews. Sorry about that. Yeah, the cleaning crew came in with a vacuum. So what I wanted to do, other than just reflect on the fish rescues, is talk a little bit about our environmental mitigation program and how we got to where we are today. And with that, you may have seen last week in the weekly in the Pine Cone, the Pacific Grove Press, our monthly district ad. And this one highlighted the fact that the river is back flowing to the ocean, at least most days. And that allows the adult steelhead to migrate upstream. And so we had a nice picture of a steelhead, which was the perfect introduction to this agenda item. But let's talk a little bit about how we got to this environmental mitigation that the district does. This is a little tough to see, but down here, this is a bulldozer. And this used to constitute river care back in the 40s. They would just basically raise all vegetation, reduce the banks. You can see a worker over here on the left, and the bulldozer here is actually in the river moving debris around. So there wasn't much respect for the natural state of the river back then. It was mostly kind of plumbed to flow with no regard for wildlife and vegetation. And here's an example a little closer near term of what would happen to the river. This is the top graphic is in 1998, and this is near Carmel Valley Ranch. And you can see it's completely denuded of vegetation. There's no particular flow in the river at this point in time. This little gray knob is a pump for pulling water from beneath the aquifer. And then here's a photo below it from 2002, which shows restoration of the banks. And it's the same location. You can see this little escarpment above the vegetation here, which is the same that you see above the pump head in the upper picture. So completely different river in, basically in a 4-year restoration period. So how we got here is in 1981, the district set a water allocation program defining what the annual production limit should be based on its view of the overall water resource. And I can tell you that we set the limit a little high, and it was revisited down here in 1990 that we'll talk about. In 84, we adopted a Carmel River management plan, which was a precursor to the longer term planning. In 87, the Carmel River Steelhead Association filed a complaint to the State Water Board, which resulted in conversations in 1988 between CalAm, the district, the California Department of Fish and Game at the time, now it's Fish and Wildlife, the State Water Resources Control Board, and the Carmel River Steelhead Association. And as a result of that, the low flow memorandum of agreement and quarterly water budget process was started. In 1990, the district undertook what was called the Allocation EIR, and we looked at 5 different scenarios of water extractions from the Carmel River and determined that all 5 of them had significant environmental impact, and therefore environmental mitigation program needed to be engaged. And a year later, we came in with the first 5-year mitigation program that was adopted by this board. 1996, it was renewed. And then beginning in 2001, rather than renewing every 5 years, it was renewed annually as part of the budget process. So the district's had its hand in environmental mitigation since the early 1980s, basically 40 plus years. Now in 1995, ignore that header, that was for a different slide, but Order 9510 from the State Water Board acted on 4 complaints that were filed against California American Water. I mentioned the first one, the Carmel River Steelhead Association in 1987, but there was also the Carmel Valley Residents Water Committee, which was an early precursor, I think, to the Carmel Valley Association's Water Subcommittee, if you will. And the Sierra Club, the Ventana chapter of the Sierra Club in 91, and the California Department of Parks and Recs in 1991. I'm sorry, both of these were 91. So there were 4 complaints sitting in front of the State Water Board, which led them to act on and issue this order. And what was interesting is Section 6.5 of this order says, and remember, this is right before our 5-year plan expired and was renewed in 1996. And they said a condition should be adopted requiring Cal-Am to implement these interim measures in the event the district fails to continue. And that was because they recognized that these interim measures were having a positive impact on the river. And until a long-term water supply that could increase flows in the river could be obtained, that these interim measures should be continued. So the components of the mitigation program, there's 4. It's the fisheries work, rescue, rearing, and release, vegetation management for erosion control and habitat, lagoon water quality and monitoring, and then our whole system of hydrologic monitoring with stream flow gauges and things that you can actually see on our website, for example. And so this is Carmel River flow at the Highway 1 bridge a few days ago, showing that it's about 30 cubic feet per second. Here's another example, just so you can kind of see how the river has changed under the stewardship of the district. This is, you can see Robinson Canyon Road Bridge in the background. This is called the Berwick Well. And there's this water supply well. You can see some fencing over here. And so the district came in with riprap and earthenware, or earthen fill, and willow cuttings and drip irrigation to restore the banks. You can see the fence line back in here again. It's the same as before, and Robinson Canyon Road Bridge in the background. And that same view, after several years, is a naturalized river setting. And the bridge actually is right behind these willows and cottonwoods that is now obscured because of the return of the habitat. Here's another example. Back in the 80s, folks thought it was great to throw tires down and concrete blocks down and what were called jacks, these 8x8s that are kind of put together as a form of erosion control. Well, this area was restored. This is Schulte Bridge, and so this is the Songbird Sanctuary that was currently managed by Big Sur Land Trust. The white arrow here, the little, I think it's a pump house. This is the same white arrow. So complete changeover due to the restoration program of the district. We've also placed large woody debris. This is not natural. You can see some cabling here, keeping it in place. This is up by Dampier Park. And that's to provide habitat and shade for fish. We've also done spawning gravel augmentation. This is an older picture at the old Carmel River Dam, which is now has been removed, but we still do this kind of program all the way up at Los Padres Dam on an as needed basis. And that gravel gets washed down by the normal flow of the river, obviously in high flow season more so than low flow. And it provides spawning territory for steelhead. We also, through our Aquifer Storage and Recovery, EIR, had to perform certain environmental mitigation. So they were a part of that EIR process. And then the actual issuance of water rights for Aquifer Storage and Recovery had other environmental related requirements, like monitoring critical riffles, which are low flow areas in the riverbed and so forth. We have a federal Section 10 permit called the Rescue Rearing and Management Plan that has other requirements for environmental mitigation, and there are others. So we have a whole pattern of EIRs and water rights and mitigation programs that have been adopted that require certain activities in the river to mitigate for the extraction of water from the Carmel River. And then in the Supreme Court ruling in 2016 over our user fee, this is kind of lengthy and you can read it at your leisure, but there had been a misunderstanding, I think, that the environmental mitigation program was really Cal-Am's responsibility, and Cal-Am was using us as their agent. And in fact, the Supreme Court ruled that no, Cal-Am has no present obligation to perform the work, and the district has an independent interest in the mitigation work. So the fact that our work that we chose to do as a local resource management agency fulfills Cal-Am's needs did not establish that we're acting as Cal-Am's agent. So it was recognized that this was an activity of a local government, could be funded by the local government. And that's one of the reasons our user fee was reinstated. Now getting straight to fish rescues of 2021. Nice article in the Herald last summer when the rescues were taking place. And here's a nice photograph. That high-tech backpack is an electrofisher, puts a small current to momentarily numb or shock fish so that they can be captured in these buckets and taken back to the steelhead facility or relocated elsewhere in the river. And here's the recent history on rescues. 2021 and 2020 were relatively the same in terms of rescues from the main river. In 2021, we did fewer rescues from the tributaries, and they also dried up a little bit quicker than in prior years. So total rescued was just under 8,000 fish in the last year. The 20-year total, 351,000 fish rescued in the river. Quite a bit of work. And here's an example of fish releases under the water. And here's a bar chart showing the fish rescues. And thankfully, the number on 2021 is the same number I showed you earlier. So our data is at least consistent. And you can see in drought years, so like this low area from 2015 through 17, there are fewer rescues, which is the same as where this data set starts in 89 through 91, which was also a drought period. And that's just, fewer opportunities, more need because the river is drying up more quickly, but also oftentimes fewer fish in the river to start with. And then finally, there you go. So it's been a very good year for our fisheries staff, and kudos well earned and well deserved. So with that, I will stop screen sharing and we can move on. Any questions?
I have
Go ahead.
two, but I don't need to go first if someone else wants to.
Oh, please go ahead, George.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
Did the 4 lawsuits initiated in the mid-'80s, is that what led to the 9510 order out of the?
Yeah, it did. The 87 complaint began the discussions, but then more complaints came in 89 and 91. And so the state board then felt compelled to take a further look into what was going on.
And then in kind of a brief fashion, can you describe the mitigation money that comes from the lawsuit that the state ordered Cal-Am to continue?
Yeah, so kind of two pockets of money. There's the money that the district raises through its user fee for environmental mitigation. And also some of our user fee goes to conservation activities and helps subsidize some of our water supply projects. But there was a settlement between the National Marine Fisheries Service and CalAm, for which the state Coastal Conservancy has become the keeper, if you will. And that settlement was primarily due to an environmental taking and a settlement over the environmental impacts of withdrawals of the water from the river. And it was $1.1 million a year for 10 years, and then got extended several years when the cease and desist order got extended. So that pool of money is almost like a reserve for certain grant programs. And so the State Coastal Commission is using some of that money, State Coastal Conservancy. Some of that money was used for dam removal. Some of it's been used for other fish obstruction removal. Some of it's going into the planning work for the Rancho Cañada restoration project. So there is still a pool of money that sits there that's from a settlement that National Marine Fisheries Service has put in the hands of the State Coastal Conservancy to manage.
I just want to add, I'm pretty impressed with the success story of the mitigation efforts from the district.
It's a different river. It is. Yeah. It actually looks like a river. It doesn't stop people from clearing out their views and trying to put benches and patios and those kinds of things if they're a close neighbor, but it's helped.
Well, thank you for this. As an overview, it's very welcome for somebody like me who hasn't followed, has only been following, for the last few years. And I wonder, is any of this information currently on our website? As I recall, we have mitigate. We have something, but maybe not what you've just shown us.
Yeah, there's a need. We've talked at public outreach about updating the website, and there's some of this information's available, but not all.
We could adapt your slide deck for something that we could make available on our website. Other questions or comments for, yes, Director Anderson?
I agree with that. This is one of the most, not knowing exactly what was going on in the providing the water. When I saw this information, it's incredibly impressive. And these habitats are really sensitive. The animals that live in them are really sensitive. And to see, first of all, the shock of what it was like, what happened to the river. Those are just shocking photographs. And what the district has done is it's remarkable, and it is an incredible success story. And I hope it does get with all those pictures, because people like to walk through and see it. It makes a really big impression, and to see what we've done. I hope it does make it to our revised website when that happens, because it's kudos to the district.
I agree.
And the only mistake we made is we didn't save all the 1968 Chevy Camaro tires that came out of that.
There's probably a couple car bodies too.
Oh yeah, that was a practice as well. Anything big and heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, particularly the before and after photos really make a very powerful impression. And probably very few members of the public are aware of all of that the district has done, all of this. So maybe we can put on our collective to-do list to let the public know more.
Mayor, do you have a?
Yeah, I was just going to concur, because historically over the years, since my first election in 1981 and the establishment of the water district, is what does the water district do? All they do is check how many units we have in our bathtub, et cetera, et cetera. And it's been an education for me too. I think it's incredible, the river mitigations and not to mention the partnership with Pure Water Monterey. So it's really good to toot our horn. I think that needs to be done. That was mentioned during our strategic planning as well. So great job. Let's get the word out.
Thank you for that, Mayor. Anyone else wish to say anything? Thank you very much for all of that, Dave.
Great. Well, thanks to our staff. I mean, we've got, during COVID, field staff doesn't work from home.
Yeah.
And I see Tom is in attendance, so we can actually thank him. And anyone else who, hello, there he is.
In the dark.
In the dark, but it's a chance to thank you for that wonderful work that you've done. And please pass our thanks on to the other staff that works with you on these restoration projects and the fish.
I will, thank you.
Beautiful work.
Okay,
And
last item, item 14. I don't know if the supervisor wants to introduce this or have me introduce the date and time, and we can go from there.
oh, Mary, you're muted. Yeah.
I'm happy to do it, Dave. It's up to you, though. I know it's still your report.
Well, go ahead and, let me just say on March 15th, coming up, during the normal session of the Monterey County Board of Supervisors at 1:30 p.m., there will be a forum regarding regional water issues in northern Monterey County. And with that, if you want to tell us and all the watchers a little bit about that forum, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you. So this is going to take place during the regular Monterey County Board of Supervisors meetings. So it will be held over in the chambers in Salinas at 168 Alisal. It'll be in person or via Zoom. But we thought that the purpose of the forum is actually to provide an overview of the current efforts that regarding water management and sustainability, and to initiate a comprehensive discussion on regional water supplies and solutions. The focus will be on the overdrafted areas of the 1,400-foot aquifer, the Monterey, Langley, and East Side subbasins, and areas of northern Monterey County outside of those subbasins. The presentations will be provided by Monterey County Water Resources Agency, the Salinas Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency, Marina Coast Water District Groundwater Sustainability Agency, and Monterey One Water. And the meeting will provide a clear picture of how the regional water picture is now influenced by the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act's required outcomes. So that's really what the genesis of all of this was. The meeting will be a first in a series of 3 different meetings planned to address these issues, and subsequent conversations will be planned for the summer and the fall of this year. Each one will have a little bit of a different focus, but we wanted to start this one with those very specific subbasins that we mentioned. My hope is that people will be interested to participate, to come to the meeting and make comment. As I said, it's like a regular board meeting, so I'll be chairing it. And it's an opportunity for us to start talking about regional solutions. And we felt that we can't really have much of a discussion if we don't know and have the background and the information. So that's what this is going to be about. And Mr. Stolt, I'm hoping, will be there. I think he's indicated that he would be able to attend for us. So there will be a lot of information, a lot of opportunity for discussion. And then again, as I said, this is just like the first bite, and then we'll have 2 more as we go on. But I think sometimes people think that we're all on such different sides of the issue. And my hope is that one of the things that might come from this is that there will be enough discussion that people will understand this is a whole county-wide problem. And it's not easy to get people to really kind of, as I have said about this meeting before, leave your guns at the door and come in and talk about water in a fair way. So I hope that people will be able to attend, and I'm very optimistic. We've got some really good presenters who have spent a lot of time on the issues and a lot of time on the forum. So that's it.
Mary, do you see this this first forum, first workshop as primarily educational to develop a collective, raise the level of knowledge collectively?
That's a very good way of describing it, Karen. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So the later sessions might focus more on discussing possible solutions.
Exactly. Yeah. So this one is sort of setting the table. Good.
Well, let's hope people can leave their guns at the at home and rise above the tribal instincts.
That's, I know sometimes I was having coffee with someone just yesterday who said that I have a beautiful vision, but it would take a long time. But I don't know. I keep thinking that I think people have a different feeling now than much in the past, perhaps because we are in such a horrendous drought. And I think everybody's beginning to understand that if we don't cooperate with one another, we're not going to be able to come up with any kind of solutions. So that's where we are at this point.
Well, speaking for myself, I am grateful for you for this effort to get us started on a productive and reasonable dialogue. George, did you want to say something?
No, I just want to add my support to the idea of a large, the big picture and how things are related. Because underground, water doesn't care what we do. It'll do what it has its own, authority, so to speak. And I'm surprised at how related the Seaside Groundwater Basin and the and other basins are related to the overdraft of the Salinas Basin. So they're all related. And if we can't talk to each other about kind of coming together, it goes back to leave guns at the door, because we've got to be able to talk about this stuff and see if there's some priority we can establish and some relationships that might emerge from this. And I'm encouraged.
Thank you, George. That's good to hear.
Any questions or comments? All right, thank you very much for that report. And if we are ready to move on to our report from District Council.
Thank you and good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. I have two items to report on. We'll start with the last month. The board did meet in closed session on January 27th. There was one item in your closed session at the end of last month's board meeting, and that was conference with labor negotiators. The board did confer on reviewing the wage and benefits for its general manager, and no reportable action was taken in January. That's another topic that's on for closed session tonight, and then eventually it will come back for open session discussion. That concludes my report as to last month. I'll continue then. I'll see if I can screen share. And help me, are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So this brings us current to, this is an expansion, an amplification of what Mr. Stolt was speaking of during his report on the status of CalAM's application to the Public Utilities Commission for approval of its amended and restated water purchase agreement. This is an update as to two items that have occurred since last month. On January 25th, there was a pre-hearing conference, and then that led to a scoping memo that came out in February, on February 9th. So what is this? This is CalAM's application asking the Public Utilities Commission to approve and authorize it to sign the water purchase agreement. This would be the amended and restated water purchase agreement to buy water from the expansion of the Pure Water Monterey groundwater replenishment project. CalAm is also asking the Commission to approve cost recovery for infrastructure that it plans to install. Those improvements are associated with the Pure Water Monterey expansion. And the Public Utilities Commission in the scoping memo further asked the parties to update water supply and water demand estimates for CalAm's previously approved Monterey Peninsula Water Supply project. So that will be a part of this proceeding. In terms of the administration, the assigned commissioner is Darcy Houck. She was appointed to the Public Utilities Commission in 2021 and was previously a PUC ALJ from 2016 to 2019. The assigned administrative law judge is Zita Klein. She had been also assigned to the district's complaint against CalAm that resulted in CalAm filing its application. So there are multiple parties to this matter. There are 9 parties that were recognized at the pre-hearing conference. They're listed on the screen. CalAm, of course, this district, Monterey One Water, Marina Coast Water District, the City of Marina, California Public Advocate's Office, the Coalition of Peninsula Businesses, Landwatch Monterey County, and Public Water Now. The time for other parties to intervene or be recognized is most likely past. One could still petition for recognition, but that recognition is a remote opportunity. So this is deemed to be a rate-making proceeding. There will be hearings if, in fact, the testimony does show disputed factual matters. And we're hopeful that the testimony will not show factual disputes, and we're hopeful that we can proceed without an evidentiary hearing in this. The commission has also said that in order to authorize the water purchase agreement, that it must be demonstrated that the project is reasonable, prudent, and in the public interest. Quite frankly, that I believe is an overstepping of the swim lane for the commission. Because they're not approving the project, they're approving CalAm's purchase of water from the project. But nonetheless, the scoping memo does say that that will be part of the decision making. So we will need to show that the project is reasonable, prudent, and in the public interest. And I think we will have no problem doing that. There are going to be multiple phases in this proceeding. The commissioner did issue the scoping memo on February 9th. There will be at least 2 phases, possibly a third. Phase 1 is the one that's immediately before us, and that addresses the approval of the water purchase agreement and the cost recovery request. The phase 2 will address the long-term water supply and demand estimates, and that may be a bit more contentious. We were hopeful to have phase 1 separate out the approval of the water purchase agreement, because that's the element for which we believe that there's consensus. Our testimony and other parties' testimony in the Public Utility Commission proceedings, it's a bit different than people think of when they think of administrative hearings or court proceedings. There's not live testimony for direct evidence. All direct evidence is provided in writing and submitted to all the parties. If there is then going to be any live testimony, it is in cross-examination on the written testimony. That is due March 11th. I'll remind Mr. Stolt that it's due on March 11th because he is a primary author for the district's written testimony. And then again on April 1st is rebuttal. This is coming upon us, and if you aren't able to get a hold of Mr. Stolt in the near future, you're going to know why. He's going to be ensconced in his office writing. That concludes my presentation on this. No board action is needed at this time, and be happy to respond to any questions.
Directors have questions for Mr. Laredo? Yes, George.
I have a quick question about separation between phase 1 and phase 2. Is phase 1 likely to lead to a decision before consideration of phase 2, or will they be tied together and have a single decision?
I believe they will be tied together and have a single decision. We can certainly ask to have an interim decision.
Yeah, it seems to me it would be helpful to separate them because one is urgent to water supply, the other is other matters.
And I believe there will be hopefully a consensus as to that point. But the commission has its own way of doing things. All we can do is ask.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can certainly ask, and I think that maybe what they have in mind is
Right.
phase one decision. That was my understanding actually, but I could be wrong. Dave, do you happen to recall when isn't CalAm's updated supply and demand report due sometime next month, sometime in March? Do you remember?
I don't have that before me.
Yeah.
No, they did their urban water management plan and submitted it late last year. And so that will be their only, they will submit testimony on supply and demand as part of the phase two.
Right.
But that's the only formal document that's out there right now.
So they're going to use that to comply with the CPUC's order to provide updated supply and demand?
Well, not
No,
necessarily.
they're going to supply a testimony specifically to phase two.
Yeah, and during the rate case, they also had a near-term 3-year demand forecast, and so somehow all those numbers need to dovetail.
Madam Chair, I do see that you have a member of the public that has his hands raised.
Thank you. Can we invite that person to speak now?
Sure.
Joel?
Sarah, could you share the timer?
You may need me to stop sharing.
I believe so.
I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Dave. Now I see we have
So it's Michael Bear.
yes.
Okay, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Good evening, everyone. So I just want to clarify, when you're talking about cost recovery, this is essentially the infrastructure that's the bypass pipeline, so that you can both inject and withdraw ASR water at the same time, and that CalAm is building it, and then it's 36 inches so that it would accommodate a desal plant, the volume required for the desal plant. Like if there was no desal plant, I'm thinking that pipeline would not have to be 36 inches in diameter. And my question is, what is the cost? Cost recovery is that they're installing it now. Do they have a cost or an estimated cost on that project? And is there any other costs they're trying to recover besides the bypass pipeline? I'm curious what the number is and clarification that that's what they're looking to recover from this agreement. Thank you.
Mr. Laredo, would you like to?
I would defer to Mr. Stolt on the amount of the cost recovery.
Okay.
I can do that. There's a table in the original testimony of Mr. Crooks that shows all of that, but it also includes some items that are not necessary simply for expansion of Pure Water Monterey, but are system improvements in general, without being able to.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I believe that actually gets beyond the scope of this.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to talk to Mr. Bear offline.
Well, and that information both is already in testimony filed, and it will be touched on in our testimony as well.
So we can tell Mr. Bear that the answer to the question can be found in testimony that CalAm submitted to the CPUC. I believe it's not Ian Crooks, but the other person, Linham's testimony. And that testimony is available electronically from from CalAm. And I don't recall all the details, but the information of what they're asking for is there. And I think we'll probably be able to make more information available in easier to read, easier to access format pretty soon.
Can I ask simply a question? Could you give me the citation number for the case before the PUC? Capital C something.
No, this is A 21-11-024.
Okay, I've got that. Thank you.
Yeah. And it's A for application. The C that you were referring to was our complaint, and that is not implicated directly. The complaint was the motivation for CalAm to file the application, but the complaint has actually since been dismissed.
And the company-related facilities cost estimate is in a table in the response to question 33, and it is Ian Crook's corrected testimony, page 26. So if Mr. Bear wants to send me an email, I can send him that excerpt.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you, General Counsel.
Thank you.
And now we have directors' reports. Do any directors wish to report on meetings with outside entities? Yes, George, please.
Yeah, I have a meeting. There's a subcommittee that's been created in the Water Master. It's a formal committee that's got Brown Act requirements. There's 3 of us on it. Ian Crook, I'm sorry, Ian Crooks, Ian Oglesby, me, and John Gagliani of Delray Oaks. The purpose is to generate an outreach effort to identify the value of the Seaside Groundwater Basin. And they're trying to promote some publicity about how valuable it is as a resource for not only current use, but also potential future use. I don't know where that's actually going to go, but there is some consultant working on a presentation, and we'll hear more about that in the near future. But that's online to be developed and to have some outreach effort on behalf of the Water Master. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Please keep us posted. Director Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I attended a couple of meetings. I listened to Monterey One Water meeting last month. And I want to thank you for your comments that you made on that. I believe we should move forward with the next project up, and that's the expansion. I'm glad you spoke on behalf of the district and on that issue. And my comments on that issue, I hope that we push for public money to be used to fix that outfall. If the district or Monterey One Water think desal is going to be our next project, it should be public, and we should use public money to fix the outfall. Monterey One Water got a nice increase to fix these problems. So I'm just pushing that. I also attended the Redistricting Committee meeting and listened in. Joel and the general manager are doing a great job on that. My comments on that, I hope that maps that are being drawn are big enough so the public can see them. So I hope we work on that between now and March 7th. And I think after the March 7th, the March 17th meeting, where they're going to be doing their final approval before they go on up to us. But thank you. You're doing a good job on that. And my last one, I visited Seaside City Council at their last meeting. And I mentioned the redistricting, and I mentioned to our representative on Monterey One Water about my thoughts on using public money to fix the outfall. And I also mentioned we'll be talking tonight about the redistricting comments that I got for them from what we got for the LAFCO. I don't know, I forgot them, but I told them about LAFCO. We'll be talking about that tonight because that has something in there about Seaside. So thank you. And job well done speaking to Monterey One Water on behalf of the district chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all those reports. And I also attended I listened to this district's redistricting committee meeting, and I see that several of our redistricting commissioners are attending this meeting tonight. And so I really want to thank them for what they're doing. It's very interesting, and we are lucky to have such committed and well-informed people who volunteered for this redistricting commission. And we're also lucky to have Joelle, who has been incredibly resourceful and organized and hardworking to get all this organized. So thank you very much, the commissioners and Joelle, for all of that. Any other reports from directors? If not, we can move on to our action items. Item 17.
Stephanie?
Thank you. Item 17 is consider adoption of resolution 2022-05, declaring the week of March 14th through 20th, 2022 to be Fix a Leak Week. This is an annual resolution of the Board of Directors. As a U.S. Environmental Protection Agency WaterSense partner, the WaterSense program promotes its annual Fix a Leak Week in March as part of its efforts to encourage Americans to use water wisely. The district is a WaterSense partner, and so we encourage the immediate repair of every leak, and especially during this week in March. Our local water waste restrictions and the high cost of water on the Monterey Peninsula make it sensible for everyone to pay attention to their water use, including keeping a watchful eye for wasteful drips and leaks, and for unusually high water bills that could indicate a not obvious problem. So during the week of March 14th through 20th, the district will urge everyone to take the 10-minute WaterSense challenge to detect and chase down leaks. And that will be found on our websites, as well as it's in the board packet tonight as part of this item. This is item number 17. And that 10-minute WaterSense challenge is provided to you both in English and Spanish. If a leak is found, fix it immediately, because little drips add up to lots of dollars and lots of gallons. Similarly, if the public notices water leaks in the streets or dripping fire hydrants or water meters, please report those leaks by emailing conserve@mpwmd.net, or there's a report water waste button on the district's website. That you can click on that and fill in the information. We follow up on that, or you can call either our district office at 831-658-5601 or CalAm at 888-673-6301. And as part of our Fix a Leak Week efforts this year, we will be looking at doing things such as information on our website and social media pages. We'll be providing fun facts and activities. We will be advertising during Fix a Leak Week or the week prior to that to remind people to be aware. And then Cutting Day, the city of Monterey this year is going back to its activity. Cutting Day is on March 19th at Friendly Plaza by Colton Hall. And the Water District will have a table there. We will be providing leak detection tablets, flappers for toilets, and these 10-minute challenge worksheets for people to stop by our table and pick them up. So the recommendation this evening is that the board adopt the resolution 2022-05, declaring March 14th through 20th Fix a Leak Week.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any questions for Stephanie on this item? Well, before we take it to the public, I just want to thank you, Stephanie, for including the items in our agenda packet that you included. They're really good resources in there. When I read through it, I learned some things about detecting leaks and fixing them. So I think they should be very useful. So I'm glad that the district is doing this, and I fully support adopting the resolution. Any director comment? Yes, Director Anderson.
Yeah, I have just a quick question. When you do this every week, every year, how much of an uptick do you notice getting, notified? Does this make a difference to do this?
Anytime that we actually put out the information about the water waste contacts, I do see a small uptick. Generally speaking, we don't get a lot of notifications, and I try to keep my eyes, and I think my staff tries to keep their eyes open for problems that are obvious, and have those attended to immediately. But as far as the public responding to these kinds of things, I often get reports of water waste in Salinas, Castroville, and other areas that are not in the district, and have to, provide that information to the appropriate water supplier. But yeah, it's hit or miss.
Okay. Some is better than none.
Supervisor Adams. Yes.
Thank you. Stephanie, is there any metrics that are kept that would let us know any kind of comparison that we could see where we are, say, from year to year to year? I know it's similar to what Karen has just asked about, whether there's something that we can measure so we know that the program is an effective one.
Well, in our conservation report, we report the number of water waste complaints that we've had during the month. So you have that information in your board packet every month. And that would probably be the best way to look at what's going on. But, we're constantly doing outreach efforts. So just pushing 1 week of fixing leaks is only part of what we do 52 weeks of the year. And I'm not sure that necessarily shows a big uptick, but it certainly continues to keep the public aware.
And is there anything that we can measure that shows whether, the pipes are getting fixed, as far as the leaks that we've got, that people have? Is there any follow-up to see whether things have gotten
Yes,
done?
yes, definitely. And in particular, we often will issue what's called a 72-hour notice, where whoever receives that notice has 72 hours to repair the leak, and then we check to see that it's been taken care of. So there is follow-up on those. And again, like I say, we do report, our water waste reports are included in the conservation report.
Good, thank you.
So where can we find data on the amount of water lost through leaks in the Monterey water system?
Yeah, so I was just going to mention that. So you've got kind of in front of the meter and behind the meter issues. And so Fix a Leak Week is after the meter. That's on the consumer side. The water loss in the distribution system as a whole, there are tables both in the general rate case filing, but then also in the 5-year urban water management plan. We can certainly get those to you. It's usually there's always a board member about every 2 to 3 years who asks the question. So we'll just write it down as a report. On the distribution side of the meter, we can give you that, the water loss factors. And then there's also another interesting graphic that Stephanie's department has put together. And it's not just Fix a Leak Week, but it's all of the different conservation programs over time charted against the consumer demand for water. And you can see that, when visitors serving hospitality industry regs went in, that began the downhill slide. And one of the reasons we've seen demand drop as measured by production for customer service is an accumulation of all these different programs. And so just kind of seeing them on the timeline and then seeing how the chart drops is interesting as well. So we'll try to bring something like both of those back just so you can kind of see it visually.
Dave, you may have answered this question, I'm not sure, but I understand about leaks on either side of the meter, but is there data available about the leaks in the distribution system on the utility side of the?
Yeah, and that's what we'll bring to you next month as an item.
Yeah, would be interested to know how it compares to other systems, reasonably comparable systems. And any trends, like if there's been more or less over time. We can take this out to the public at this point, and then we can entertain a motion on this item. Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Oh, that's fine. I just wanted to point out, one is probably people will report a leak after the fact, and they'll get a bill and they'll go, what the heck happened? Call Cal-Am for relief. And often it's a sprinkler system or a drip system. And this is why the district's rebate on the I forget the name of the
Smart flow meter.
So say that again, Stephanie.
Smart flow meters.
Smart flow meters. That is so important. Then also, about 2/3 of our city, and in fact, most of the peninsula are renters, interestingly enough. And they might not even know if they have a leak, because if they have a congregate water meter, it wouldn't show up. So it would be important to reach out to landlords, I would think. And then interesting, General Manager mentioned that our occupancy rate in hotels is actually down. And so you have less water demand, but on the other hand, the rates are way up. So we are receiving our 12% TOT, and we're doing really well, even though occupancy is down, but the rates are up. Just that's just a side fact.
Great.
Other comments? Joelle, can we go out to the public, take this out to the public?
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on this matter, please raise your hand. And Chair Paul, I do not see anybody with their hand. Take that back. Sarah, can you share your timer? And at this time, I would like to invite Eric Tynan. Eric, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Oh, thank you. This is Eric Tynan. I'm the General Manager for the Castro Community Services District. I heard Stephanie mention that she had complaints about water leaks in Castroville. I'm not aware of getting any phone calls regarding from out of my district. Of course, we have a few small leaks, but we have about an 8.5% water loss. So that's actually pretty good for the industry. But if you guys ever do get a call, if it's related to my district or in my neighborhood, I'd be happy to help you with it. So thanks again, and appreciate the fine work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Okay, you could stop the screen share. And Chair Paul, I do not see anybody else with their hands raised, so I'll return this back to the board.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to on this item?
I'll move approval of the resolution.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
And that second was by Director Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, good to go. Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Yes.
Director Roberson,
Yes.
Director Malik, absent. Vice Chair Adams,
Aye.
Chair Paul,
Yes.
the motion passes.
Thank you. Item 18, strategic goals.
Yes, and I think we can be relatively brief with this. Exhibit 18 shows the accumulated comments and edits from our January 21st special meeting, which was solely for the discussion of calendar year 2022 goals, strategic goals of the district. And then added to that are the near-term and long-term objectives, where near-term means really the current calendar year, and longer term means 2 to 3 years, kind of on a reasonable outlook. And as I said, Exhibit 18 is just a compilation of the notes and discussion, some of which we tried to do in real time during the special session. Some were just handwritten notes. And so my recommendation is that you adopt these strategic goals and objectives for the current year.
Thank you. Comments, directors? Well, I'd just like to highlight for the sake of the public, although you have the strategic goals in the agenda packet, and under each, the near-term and long-term objectives, I'd just like to highlight that the first is and remains to secure a safe, reliable, sustainable, affordable, legal water supply. And that, as far as I know, has always been the district's #1 goal and still is. And the second is to pursue public ownership pursuant to Measure J. And there are a number of others that have to do with the district's organization and management and being financially healthy, and that's important because we know that government agencies can be run effectively and efficiently, and we want ours to continue to be effective and efficiently run, and the financial resources to be well managed. It's one of our goals, and we're going well on that. And I'd like to, people heard this at the last meeting if they attended, but this year the board decided to add a 7th goal, which is to overhaul our public outreach effort. And there's been some discussion of that. And we plan to start work on that soon. And we invite members of the public who have suggestions related to that. We welcome your suggestions by email or coming to the committee meetings, suggestions about needs for education, particular audiences, particular methods of outreach, any ideas you have, suggestions that you think would be useful for public outreach, we welcome. Director Adams.
Thank you. I did have just one minor suggestion in the goals. And I don't know if this is an appropriate time to bring it up. It's very minor, but under #3, objective E, the current language says coordinate, communicate with Salinas Valley GSA to blah, 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 blah. And it seems like that's limiting, and that it should actually say something more like coordinate, communicate with other water management agencies. Because I think that there are other agencies in addition to the Salinas Valley GSA that we need to ensure we coordinate and communicate with, like MCWRA and Monterey One Water and Monterey Marina Coast Water District, etc. So that was just a little minor language thing that I thought we might change. It's included in the long-term objective, so I'm not so sure that the short-term objective is even needed, but I did feel like it should be mentioned if we're going to be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Will do.
Thank you. I think it's a very good point, and we can certainly modify that the language if you think it's helpful. We can say the Salinas Valley GSA and other. How would you like
other
to?
Water management agencies. Yeah, and other water management agencies.
That is in the long-term goals, so are we just duplicating verbiage?
Yeah, I kind of didn't want to get into a whole thing about it, but you're correct that it's mentioned. I don't even know if it's actually needed up here as a short-term goal.
Mm-hmm, because we have
in more than one case, you're going to have that duplication because we need to do it now, but we need to keep doing it in the future.
So it's up to you, Supervisor Adams, if you would like to make a motion to make that change. Happy to entertain it. If you think it's adequately covered, then still a point well taken. It's up to you.
Yeah, if it's an easy fix, then I think we should go ahead and do it so that it's consistent.
Okay,
Agreed.
okay.
Is that a motion?
Yes, I just made it. Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay.
George Riley seconded. Okay. Let's have a vote on that, please. So the motion is to add and other water management agencies to 3E. Any questions about it?
No, but we do have a member of the public who would like to comment on this matter. Sarah, can you share the timer? At this time, I would like to invite Marley Melton. Marley, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Yes, I wanted to suggest a change in wording on item 5, the long-term objective, and unfortunately, the public comment screen, I can't figure out how to minimize it, so I cannot see my exact suggestion for a change in wording. But I believe in item 5 and the long-term objective for the user fee, that we should eliminate, it would be helpful to eliminate the word surplus. And then I have some other wording. If anyone could tell me how to minimize the screen on my computer.
Yes, if you hit escape, that should do it.
Okay, just a second. Okay, here's the wording. Long-term 5, long-term objectives. Implement the board's policy to use user fee revenue as specified in section 3 of ordinance 152. Here's a change. First change was eliminate the word surplus. Here's the next change. Including, comma, when sufficient, comma, to pay down the Mechanics Bank loan, and the rest as written until the last sentence when you also eliminate the word surplus.
I got I understand the point about the surplus, using the word surplus, and I actually thought we had addressed that, but I guess not in this particular place. We could say available user fee revenues when sufficient.
I would recommend just say use user fee revenue as specified in, oh, this is a change, as specified in section 3 of ordinance 152, which is a very broad list of things that you can use it for. And then comma, including comma when sufficient, the rest of it within. But that is up to the board, of course.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Comments, questions?
And thank you. I'll conclude. Unless you have any questions for me, I'll conclude my comment.
All right, thank you, Marley.
Okay. Thank
At
you.
this time, I would like to invite John Tilley. John, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thank you, Joelle. Thank you, board members. I would object to that vehemently as a member of the 152 committee. That kind of language is a broad paintbrush. That's not what the spirit of the 152 committee, and it really seems to be pandering. So if you would, please do not take that forward. And I think also as well, there's just so much going on around the water supply charge that it should be just not accepting that language. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak to this agenda item?
Sarah, you could stop the screen share and chair Paul. I did not see any members of the public with their hands raised, so I'll return this back to the board.
Thank you. Well, I think that we should change the word surplus to available. I think we have done that in a few other contexts. It's available. Surplus just gives it's the wrong word. It's really the available user fee revenues, not surplus. So I would like to make a motion to change the word surplus to available. It appears in that paragraph, which is at the bottom of page 154 of the agenda packet. As for the other suggestions that Marlene Melton made, I would leave them aside at this time just because it is getting into the weeds a little bit too much to take up at a board meeting, in my opinion. But I'd like to move that the suggestions may have merit, but I think we don't need to get that specific here. That's my opinion, but I'm open to other opinions.
No, I think that works, but for clarification, the supervisor did make a motion with some changes to goal number 3. And if she is willing to change the word surplus in 2 occasions here to available, and make that the motion, then we'd just be looking for a second.
Supervisor Adams, would you be willing to take that amendment to your motion? Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. It wasn't anything I had determined to do, but if that will move things along, then the answer is yes.
And I second the change.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Shall we, if there are no more comments, we can vote on that amended motion.
Right. Director Malik? Absent. Director Roberson?
Yes.
Director Riley?
Aye.
Director Edwards?
Yes.
Director Anderson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Adams?
Aye.
Chair Paul?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Great.
Good. So we have adopted our strategic goals and objectives for this year. And now we're going to move on to item 19, the draft resolution in support of activation of the district's latent powers.
Thank you. This is a proactive step, which is somewhat non-binding because it's contingent upon both the approval of our activation of latent powers by LAFCO, possibly Monday during their hearing on reconsideration request that the district has made. But in effect, what we are doing here with this resolution is to make a commitment to follow through on some of the contingent requirements of the original approval that was recommended by LAFCO staff, both in their summer staff report as well as their October staff report and ultimately their December staff report. And those include dispute resolution efforts with the local taxing agencies over property tax, potential property tax impacts of an acquisition. Positive, proactive support for dealing with the satellite systems, if not acquired by the district in front of the PUC and elsewhere. To establish a framework with Marina Coast Water District for the 2 spheres of influence where we overlap. And then finally, to focus on permanent water supply solutions that do not require additional Salinas Valley water sources beyond what's already legally committed. I should note that the last whereas or the last recital was a holdover from a different LAFCO resolution. So we would, our recommendation is to approve resolution 2022-06 with the edit out of the last whereas, which appears on the second page.
Thank you. And I want to thank the board and you, Dave, for the resourcefulness of the idea of going this extra mile or miles to demonstrate how proactive the district is willing to be to accommodate all the concerns raised.
Well, we're going to give a shout out to Director Riley as well, because early on when he thought negotiation was possible, he also felt a stronger statement about our commitment to do these things was needed. And we felt that a adopted resolution was the strongest way for the district to make a statement. So that's its genesis.
Yes. Yes, that's right. And I appreciate that as well. Any comments? Director Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. C, I know we got to do this anyway, but if we're not approved, when are we going to do it? I know redistricting is every 10 years. Now, where can we fit this in? Can we change our district boundaries if we negotiate something with Seaside, Marina Coast, and us?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do intend to go back to our demographers after they can take a deep breath from all of these, various different redistricting issues, and ask them to develop, and it'll cost some money, but to develop what the district would look like with revised voter divisions if we drew our line at the sphere of influence line with Marina Coast Water District. And that would have a ripple effect, a domino effect, because it would cut off part of Division 1. And in order to keep everything within reasonable parameters of each other population-wise, it'll just cascade through Division 2, Division 3, and around the corner to Division 4 and 5. And so that'll be an interesting discussion. And it's not clear that we would want to do it unless we were trying to protect that crossover and sphere of influence. But we need to look at it, and we need to then go back to our property tax consultant too, and make sure that the revenue impact on the district would not be problematic. So, but yeah, that scope of work will be defined as something to go do. I don't, not knowing what the outcome might look like, it would have to go to the board for a lot of discussion. But we're not going to let you retire just by redistricting you out of office.
Thank you. But my final question, did you talk to Marina Coast about this? About what we put in this?
Yeah, early on we talked to their attorneys about establishing a framework. What was asked of us by LAFCO was not to resolve it, but to come to an agreement with Marina Coast on how to resolve it if in fact the acquisition were to go through. So it would be, again, contingent on the acquisition. And if it doesn't go through, then it's just a discretionary choice on our part to decide whether or not we want to redraw our boundary. Now that we've seen we can redraw our boundary for those 58 parcels we picked up, we would go through the same kind of effort if on the board's discretion you wanted to reduce the district boundary.
Thank you. I just wanted to put that on the record.
Yep.
That we have talked about this. The city of Seaside agrees with you about delaying this until you get that resolution. If not, we know we got to do it anyway.
Yep.
So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Director Riley.
Yeah, I think the ripple effect, Dave, will be through District 1 specifically for sure, and District 2 probably. They're the more substantive changes that are likely to take place. I would like to see while the demographers are at work and have the data, I would love for them to present some option, some angle, some picture of what it might look like when the change comes. And then we have the data to work from, or the concept of change that we can work from when we talk to Marina Coast. And if it may cost a little bit more, that's fine. I don't see it in the same time frame as the redistricting decision we have to make. but I see that information being enormously valuable later. And if we can develop it now while they're at work doing it, I just think it's an economical way to proceed.
So to be continued, we don't have this on the agenda for discussion, but it's an interesting idea and maybe we can pursue it.
Yeah, it's on our to-do list. It'll get done.
Can I add another comment to just this agenda item specifically?
Please.
I feel like if we stretch, if we kind of try to wrap our arms around the larger issue that we're dealing with on LAFCO, and the larger issue are the individual comments that were made by individual LAFCO members that seem to me to be very minor to the larger picture. But minor to me is not minor to them. So it was significantly major to them to deal with these issues. And I think this resolution addresses very specific issues that were raised by individual LAFCO members. And if they are responsive at all or willing to hear the district's approach to these specific issues, then I think we have an opportunity to, see some broader context of their discussion as opposed to their kind of targeted comments that they've made in the past. And so I think this would be a great step forward for the district. I think it would just be it would be momentous to me to see that the district is making this extra effort, like you said, the chair, the extra mile, to try to accommodate and respond to very substantively the issues that were raised by some of the individual commissioners.
Mr. Laredo, through the chair, Mr. Laredo, now's not the time to talk about this. We're going to talk about this in closed session tonight.
We have closed session on tonight. We can get into this in a bit. Yes.
Okay, because from what I read today from LAFCO, it doesn't look too good, but I want to hear y'all, what y'all decision is on this. Okay.
Well, after you go to the public, I'd be willing to make a motion.
Okay. Well, I agree with what Director Riley said. It does respond to things that some of the LAFCO commissioners have said. If they read this and are willing to think about it, it could, if they were willing to think about it, it could lead them to truly reconsider the situation. And I'm glad you've proposed that we make this effort. I support it. All right, let's take it out to the public.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on this matter, please raise your hand. Sarah, can you please share the timer? And at this time, I would like to invite Susan Schiavone. Susan, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I do agree with Board Member Riley. I think that you guys have been great all along and cooperative in giving them everything they wanted. And if the last thing being some assurance about relieving their anxiety or whatever it is that is so bothering them, even though I find them not very good reasons, they could possibly change their minds. And so I support this. I agree that you're being overly nice and cooperative, and I support that and I respect you for it. So yes, I support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Are there other members of the public?
Yes, at this time, I would like to invite the number ending in 312. I'll ask you to unmute, and you'll need to push *6 on your phone, and you may identify yourself for the clerk's record.
Oh, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we could hear you.
Oh, so Margaret Ann Coppernoll calling in. Good evening, everybody. I just think this resolution is fantastic, and everything that you've done in this regard is fantastic and extraordinary, going not only the extra mile, maybe thousands of extra miles here to try to accommodate every detail and every concern that's been expressed in this whole endeavor. So I congratulate you all for a fantastic job. I'm very proud of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Margaret Ann.
Yes, at this time, I would like to invite Michael Bear. Michael, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thank you, Joel. I agree with Mr. Edwards. LAFCO staff recommended denial today. They said mostly it was rehashing stuff, and if it was new information, can't be considered because there's no reason why you couldn't have presented the information earlier. So, I mean, they're hostile. Even their board, I think their staff is wonderful, but technically they're saying looking at reconsideration, they're not recommending it. Well, if the board went against them when they were recommending approval, and I think that still stands, the basic idea, what are the chances they're going to overrule their staff again and say, oh no, now this time we're really going to consider it? I just, Chair Paul, I just don't think they really are reading it. Director Stoll said that earlier on, and he's quoted in the paper. I don't even know if they even read it. Do they even care what's going on? I think they're making up these conditions for stalling, to cost the district money. Gerald Leffel has been asked to be recalled. I mean, there's an effort to recall her. She's been asked to be recused by Public Water now because she was, a signer against Measure J, Measure O. These people are not going to change. And so I'd just like to go back to, I sent you a letter Monday or Tuesday, and there was that one sentence about we're opening to continue to negotiate and, have discussions and negotiations with LAFCO. And I move that you strike that one sentence because for the reasons I mentioned in my letter. It doesn't change it. You can still negotiate with them. You still can discuss with them. But it's, Ms. Scavone said, you're going overboard. You're going overboard, and she supports it. I think you're going overboard, and I don't support it. I think it's time to say, look, we've given you everything you wanted. What are you going to do? Because, we're going to take action based on your decision. And if you want to talk to us, come talk to us. But I don't think you want to put that in the document. So I had asked someone to make a motion to strike that particular sentence from page 3 that said, we're open to negotiating, continuing to negotiate. Not that you're not saying we're not going to negotiate with you anymore. You just don't need to make it in writing because I don't think it adds. So I have 13 seconds, and I just want to compliment Dave Stoll for his heroic work over these last several months. This is another outstanding document and one of many. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes, Sarah, you could stop the screen share. Actually, we have Marley. Sarah, could you screen share the timer again? No permission. And at this time, I would like to invite Marley Mountain. Marley, when you're ready.
Yes, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I also would like to compliment Dave Stoll and the entire staff and the board members on the heroic patience and diligence and detail and good thinking you have contributed to the whole process. The only, I'm sort of the wordsmith girl. I've shared many of Michael Bear's doubts about the willingness of the LAFCO board to reconsider its position, to be informed by accurate data. I don't know if any of them bothered to read all of the good work their staff did. And also, I'm even wondering if their seemingly minor and unrelated objections were even genuine, or whether they were just kind of brought forth as something to justify a different commitment to something that they didn't want to state publicly. And I guess we'll never know. But if you decide to go ahead with this, I would change the paragraph A under general provisions right after Rule 19.8. I would say it shall be by the policy of the district if and when feasible and publicly beneficial, or whatever the wording is in Measure J. I don't have it in front of me, but quote that wording to include both feasible and publicly beneficial, because part of the reason the thinking that seems to be behind some of LAFCO's objections seems to be that they believe that because there are board members who had favored Measure J, that the board is strongly biased to not, in a way, LAFCO's intervening because it says it doesn't believe the board is unbiased enough to do a good job evaluating whether or not it's really feasible and publicly beneficial to secure and maintain public ownership. Thank you. Oh, but I'll use my last few seconds to thank you again for all that you're doing and the wonderful work. And gosh, I sure hope we all succeed somehow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, at this time, I would like to invite John Tilley. John, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thank you, Joel. Simply want to say that at a time when we're going through extreme changes in our water supply, that the focus be on supply and demand. And I'm afraid that Measure J is getting far too much.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Tilley, but the screen, the timer is not going. Thank you. Okay, you can your 3 minutes is restarted, Mr. Tilley.
Thank you, Chair Paul. I appreciate that. I appreciate your work, all of your work. And the work that's being put into Measure J right now is seriously taken away from the focus of the district on demand and supply. They're hand in hand. The idea of Measure J is supplanting the idea of addressing the needs of this community for demand and supply. There is already a agreement in this community that we need to get off of the Carmel River, and we need to have a supply that is sufficient to serve the multifaceted needs of this community. And I'm afraid that Measure J is, again, supplanting the idea of providing water for our community. Thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Tilley.
And Sarah, you could stop the screen share. Chair Paul, I do not see anybody with their hands raised, so I return this back to the board.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board?
I move approval of the staff recommendation.
Looks like Director Edwards wants to second it. He's, although you're muted, Director Edwards, I think that's what you were trying to say.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I'll second that, but I'd like to make a comment. General Manager, are we off the river? I keep hearing people talking about we own that. Are we off the river?
We are down to the legal right. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We gotta bang that in that we are within the legal right. So people always talk about we own the river, that we passed that now. My next question is to Mr. Laredo. Mr. Laredo is taking that comment that Mr. Bear won out. Would that hurt this document, or should we keep it in there? I'm hearing that today with the United States. in Ukraine. We need to keep negotiating or good faith or whatever.
I do not believe that a pledge to continue to negotiate is harmful to the district. I believe it is actually politically helpful. It is not legally harmful.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had. And we can take that roll call vote if y'all want to.
Before I take it out to a vote, Dave, I believe I heard you state that you wanted the last whereas to be stricken out.
Correct.
Would you like the maker of the motion to modify his motion to include that?
Well, since Director Riley moved the staff recommendation and I had verbally recommended striking that whereas, we'll just wrap it all up with a bow and make it that part of the motion.
Okay, that works. Director Anderson?
Yes.
Director Edwards?
Yes.
Director Riley?
Aye.
Director Roberson?
Aye.
Director Malik? Absent. Vice Chair Adams?
You're
She
muted.
said aye, even though it was muted.
I don't know why I keep doing that.
Chair Paul?
Yes,
The motion passes.
very good. On to item 20.
Okay, so items 20 and 21, I believe, Suresh, you're here for both.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair, members of the board. Item 20 is to authorize expenditure for purchase and installation of a security camera surveillance system. And by the way, I do have my camera turned on, but if it starts freezing, I will turn the camera off. So just as a word of caution on that. The district currently has 3 primary facilities. We have our Harris Court Administration Building. We have the ASR, or the Aquifer Storage Recovery Facility. And we also have the Sleepy Hollow facility. So this effort here is to purchase and install a security surveillance system that will actually consolidate all of those 3 facilities from one main big system. I mean, even though it will have individual camera systems available at each facility, but they will all tie into the district's network system so that one dashboard, one user access. So we are going to be able to see all of those 13 camera images from one single sign-on. And that was a big push. We wanted to make sure that these were not separated systems. So because this ties into the district's IT network, we wanted to keep it with the district's current IT provider, which is Devera. Simply we get nervous when somebody comes and touches our IT system. So due to that, we wanted to make sure that Devera was responsible for purchasing, installing, and configuring the system, because all of these camera images are going to be stored or actually accessed through the cloud, but stored on the district premises. So once we go in the cloud and then bring it back into the district office, there's always that slight chance of infiltration by the bad guys. And we wanted to make sure that that was all secured. So we talked to Devera, had them build a code for us. It took them about 18 months to get this to us, but finally they got it done. There is going to be some trenching and conduit work involved at both the ASR and the Sleepy Hollow sites. And we are going to be using our contractor that we use for all our other building stuff, which is the YSS Builder. So we got YSS Builders and Devera together and had them bring us a quote. They did come up with a $45,404 quote, which is attached to this staff report. But due to the shortage and delay of all of the IT equipments, there's a lot of long wait times. The price fluctuates quite a bit. We are adding about $45.95, so about close to $4,600 as contingency. We don't feel we will need to use it, but just because due to the other escalation now that Russia and Ukraine, we're reading that there's going to be more challenges in things being provided. So we are putting some buffer in there. On the equipment side, there is going to be no change on the labor and installation. That's going to remain constant, what they had quoted us. But the $4,600 additional contingency is going to support any increase in prices for the equipment. We did budget for this work in our original 21-22 budget for $30,000 in the fixed asset line item. Unfortunately, this has come up to about $50,000 project, so we are going to be increasing a $20,000 additional funding through the mid-year budget process, which is the next item. And that is my report.
Thank you, Suresh. Questions? I'll just add the administrative committee reviewed this in quite a lot of detail and asked lots of questions. And I'm glad you've brought this to us, Suresh. Director Edwards?
Thank you, Chair. I know we went over in the administrative committee. This is a sole source contract. Mr. Laredo, could you tell us why is the sole source contract? Is it because of IT or whatever it is? Could you explain to the public why it's sole source and why we can do what we're doing?
I'd be happy to. This requires special expertise concerning the district's as built. And I don't believe that I believe the district is at a disadvantage to just put this out for a general bid. Because these are professional services, you are authorized to do this as a sole source.
Okay, basically because our security of our IT.
Yes.
We don't want everybody looking at it.
That's correct. Yes.
That's what I was looking for. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Director Edwards. And as as Suresh explained, we want this to be integrated with the existing IT system. So that's probably another reason, I imagine, that the sole source makes sense.
Correct. This will be integrated with our IT system. They will be doing some VLAN work and separating this from our network, but they are responsible for maintaining our network. So any security breaches, we can hold together responsible for it.
Yeah. Other comments or questions? Then let's take it out to the public.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on item number 20, please raise your hand. And Chair Paul, I did not see anybody with their hands raised, so I'll return this back to the board.
Great. Would someone like to make a motion?
I will. I recommend that we adopt this.
I'll second it.
For security.
Thank you. Okay, let's vote.
Director Riley? Director Edwards?
Yes.
Director Anderson?
Yes.
Director Roberson?
Yes.
Director Malik? Absent. Going back to Director Riley?
Aye.
Vice Chair Adams?
Aye.
Chair Paul?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And our last action item for the regular agenda, 21, mid-year budget adjustment.
Yes, directors. This is the consider adoption of the mid-year fiscal year budget 21-22 budget adjustment. Joel, if you or Sarah could bring up my PowerPoint slide, that'd be great. We'd go through brief about 10 or 12 slides just to show what the budget adjustments are. Historically, we've done this at the end of January. We close the 7-month period. We look at all our revenues. We look at all of our expenditures. And we decide if an adjustment is needed, either on either side, the revenue or the expenses. And we did do that through the end of January. We looked at the finances, what we have done so far, and decided there were some minor budget adjustments that were needed. There are some good news with the budget. So with the budget change, so we'll go through that in this series of slides. Joel, next slide, please. So just briefly, the revenue summary, this is the original budget. We did adopt a $29.6 million budget. This was all the slices of pie on the revenue side. Next slide, please. On the expenditure side, we had to match it up with the revenue. It's $29.6 million, again, the same dollar amount. And as you can see, these the major big slices where the project expenses, the PWM purchase water, reimbursement projects, personnel costs, and some minor stuff. And again, this is the original adopted budget. So now we'll go through the changes and see what adjustments were needed. Next slide, please. We did look at the $29.6 million revenue through the first 7 months. We have collected about $11.6 million on the revenue side. That's about 39% of the budget. Fairly typical. We've looked at all of our prior historical trend. It is somewhere close to between 33 to 41%. So this is right in line with that. And then on the expenses side, a $29.6 million budget with 33% expense so far, which is about $9.8 million. And again, that's a fairly typical trend line as well. So nothing out of the extraordinary. These were basically, when we examined the budget for the first 7 months, it looked right in line. The next slide, please. On the personnel cost side, which is Exhibit 10B, there were no changes, no adjustments needed. So we're just showing that we've reviewed all of the sections of the budget. Next slide, please. Exhibit 10C, this is our supplies and services part of the budget. We did make some changes, some minor changes. We had to increase some line items. So some pluses, some minuses. All in all, when we did all of these adjustments, there was a reduction of $28,100 on the supplies and services line. Next slide, please. On the fixed asset side, we just talked about the site security system. We're increasing the budget by $20,000. The workstation refresh, originally we were looking at leasing. And on the previous slide, if you would see, I had a leasing cost at a reduction of $10,000. We decided leasing doesn't work. We are going to be outright buying the equipment. So we are increasing the workstation refresh line item by $60,000. There's an IT upgrade line item for $15,000. We have identified a switch which needs replaced. It is a fairly expensive switch. It needs to be replaced. So that's what has been identified and put in the budget. The Acela update is our water demand division database that we have now used it successfully for over 3 years or maybe 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. There are some changes that needs to be done to the database itself. Water demand division did go out, reach out to Acela and got a quote from them. So we are putting in $55,000 for the adjustment on the Acela update. All in all, the fixed asset Exhibit 10D gets up by $150,000 in the budget. Next slide, please. Exhibit 10E, this is the major bulk of it, where basically the project expenses are lined up, and the more detailed report is the actual Exhibit 10E, but I'm just going to hit some highlight projects. PWM expansion, we are reducing it by $350,000. Measure J, we looked at the 7-month cost. There are some legal activities that's going to increase the cost, so we are upping that cost by $140,000. Sleepy Hollow design construct tank, we are reducing that by $75,000. ASR facility, we are going to be reducing by 1.3. There are some permit change conditions which doesn't require the dechlorination tank to be, chlorination project to be done. So that's $1 million reduction. The other $336,000, it's just going to be deferred from this budget cycle to next budget cycle. IRWM project, this is a grant funded project. We are going to be deferring that to next fiscal year as well. Some minor change on the upside for the hydrology programs. Riparian erosion program reducing by $7,000. Fisheries program, there are some changes. On Exhibit 10E, you will see there are some pluses and minuses, but when we add those together, they come out to net zero. So I'll just show that line item that if anybody's reading the actual Exhibit E, they will see some fisheries program line item changes, but there's a net zero for that. And then conservation program, there's a reduction of $63,500. There's a little error on this page. The subtotal, it's $2.9 million, but it's not a positive, it's a negative. So I forgot to include the parentheses in there. So we are reducing our project expenses budget by $2.9 million. It's a big, big error. Next slide, please. So expenditure summary, original budget, we started with $29.6 million, no personal cost, supplies, no personal changes, supplies and services, reduction of $28,000, project expenses, reduction of $2.9 million, fixed asset, we increased by $150,000, And then the debt service, we paid a principal payment to Mechanics Bank in August or September, I believe. So that we did not include that in the original budget. We had set aside money. We said we were going to pay, but we never got that materialized. It wasn't in the budget, but we are adding that into the budget. So the amended budget from 29.6 goes to $27.2 million. Next slide, please. On the revenue adjustments, the original budget was $29.6 million. The property tax, we looked at the first collection from December and the prior year collection as well, the 2021 collection. So based on that historical trend, we feel there's a need to increase the property tax revenue by 100,000, and simply that's because all of the property value has been going up, and so our share of the money has gone up a little bit. User fee, we looked at the trend line again over the last 4 years, and we determined that whatever we collected through December, and then we estimated for January, and we forecasted from February through June, we feel the original budget of $5 million is going to come in at $5.3 million. We again are very conservative on that. We feel it may be a little higher than that, but we are increasing it by $300,000. PWM water sales. That is a typo. It's not actually PWM water sales. It should be IRWM project, the grant that we are reducing the expenses by $1.239 million. So the revenue gets reduced on the IRWM grant as well. So there's a typo there. But the dollar amount is correct. It's $1.239 million that gets reduced because we are not doing on the project side. We are not doing that expenses. So on the revenue side, that gets reduced. And then from debt service, debt reserve fund, we are setting aside $500,000 because we are paying that $500,000 into the Mechanics Bank loan. So we had collected that on prior fiscal year. We never showed the payment going to Mechanics Bank. And so now we're showing the payment going to Mechanics Bank from the expense side. So we're showing that that $500,000 is actually coming from the previously accumulated debt reserve fund. And then from fund balance, we had estimated to be a little over $5 million on the carryover fund and the reserve fund. We are going to be reducing that by almost $2 million. So that's the good news, is that we're not going to use that much from our fund balance. So all in all, $29.6 million revenue budget gets amended to $27.2 million. Next slide, please. This is the reserve analysis. Basically, this is where that $1.9 million shows the no change to the litigation insurance, the capital equipment reserve account. We had originally budgeted no change from the projected balance to the actual balance, but there are changes in the current year budget. And so that's basically putting more money in and taking some money out. That ends up being a little over $1 million. Flood drought reserve, no change on that line item. Debt reserve, no change on that line item. That's the reserve fund held by Mechanics Bank. Pension obligation bond, we had projected to be $300,000. The actual balance as of June 30th, 21 was $300,000. We are going to be setting aside in 21-22 budget cycle $100,000. So that money is going to go to $400,000 at June 30th, 22. Same thing, similar on OPEB reserve. It's going to go from $300,000 to $400,000. No change on the Reserve Bank, Mechanics Bank loan. The projected balance was $500,000. The actual balance as of June 30th, 21 was $500,000. We are taking $500,000, setting it aside this year, but then remember, we're also making a payment. So from the fund itself, it would have been zero if we had not planned to set aside another $500,000 in 21-22. So that's why you see the change is zero, because it's the net effect of zero, but there is money going in and out for the fiscal year at $500,000. And then general operating reserve, we had projected to be 9.2. When we closed our books audit, it turned out to be 16.8, and that's simply because most of the projects were deferred into this fiscal year. So if the project doesn't get carried forward, they get accounted for in the fund balance. And then on the, previous slide, please. And then on the changes, the budget changes for 21-22, you will see that $1.7 million, that's basically a reduction because we are not going to be doing all of the projects that we had talked about. So our estimated balance for general reserve side is going to be a little over 15.1, and our total reserve for all fund balances are going to be $18.3 million. Next slide, please. And then just to remind, we do this every budget cycle. There are still the district's future obligation commitments, the water allocation process is tagged at about $400,000, Rabobank debt, which will become due in June of 2023, that stands at 2.7. PWM water reserve, pure water Monterey water reserve, we still have to buy additional water reserves. That's tagged at about $2.5 million in future years. Pension obligation, we just did a report. I believe we approved the report tonight through the closed session. I mean, not closed session, but the consent calendar. Pension obligation stands at $6 million. OPEB obligation stands at 4.5. So all in all, our total future obligation stands about $16 million. And that concludes my presentation on the adjustments.
Questions? Yes, Director Riley.
I have a question, Suresh or the GM. One of the reductions is a $1 million offset or something from the ASR dechlorination the piece of ASR. And I'm just wondering, and the explanation was due to a change in permit conditions. And I'm just curious about, was this serendipity? Was this by design? Was this an application? What happened to cause that? I mean, it's good news, but I don't understand how you could get a $1 million reduction that quickly.
Yeah, I'll address that. I think John Lear is available, but I'll just go ahead. You may recall that they were moving ASR from basically a special permit to the general permit, similar to all the other conjunctive use programs statewide. And so we weren't sure at the time if the Regional Water Quality Control Board would require us to dechlorinate under the new general permit conditions. So we put in a placeholder for our annual budget, assuming that there might be dechlorination required. But we've recently been informed that the disinfection byproducts are basically occurring in a limited site-specific area, and we're meeting the testing requirements, so we're not going to be required to do dechlorination. And so that will save us a bunch of equipment and installation and so forth. So it can come out of the budget now.
Okay, I just want to compliment the staff for projecting ahead of potential costs in a way that's a conservative approach to budgeting. And I'd much rather hear that we anticipated something that didn't happen rather than we anticipated something and we didn't plan for it. So I appreciate the approach.
Well, that's going to happen sometimes too, though. Keep that.
Okay.
To second that thought. Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's take it out to the public. If there's any public wants to comment.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on item number 21, please raise your hand. And at this time, I would like to invite John Tilley. John, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thank you, Joel. Simply would like to thank Suresh for a very thoughtful presentation.
Is that it?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
And Sarah, you could stop your screen share there. And Chair Paul, we do not have any members of the public who wish to make comment on item number 21. So I'll return this back to the board.
Thank you. Is there a motion on item 21?
Move approval.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. And let's vote.
Director Riley?
Aye.
Director Roberson?
Aye.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Malik, absent. Director Vice Chair Adams,
Aye.
Chair Paul.
Yes,
The motion passes.
very good. So informational items, and staff reports. Any questions?
Number 29 was pulled by Mr. Tilly.
Yeah, we covered that in the general manager's report, generally speaking.
Yeah, well, comments on information items are supposed to be made at the beginning of the meeting. I don't know if, and as Dave Stoll just said, that information was covered in GM's report.
Yes, I think we're okay though.
Angela. So if there are no questions on the informational items, I will ask our general counsel to read us into closed session.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have 4 items on our closed session agenda. Conference with legal counsel concerning potential litigation, the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District versus LAFCO. We have a conference with legal counsel for a significant exposure to litigation, Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association versus MPWMD. We have a conference with labor negotiators concerning the employment contract for your general manager, and then conference with labor negotiations concerning the representational contract with your district council, myself. This would be the time to take any public comment on any of those 4 items before you adjourn to closed session.
Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on these 4 closed session items?
Madam Chair, I see no hands.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I do see one hand. Michael Bear.
Sarah, could you share the timer? Michael, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Give Dave Stoll a raise. He has been phenomenal. All the rest of you guys have been really good. Dave Stoll has been better than that.
There goes 5% of that one.
That'll cost me something.
All right. You buy me coffee later.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Yep.
All right.
Chair Paul, I do not see anybody else with their hands raised.
And I think we can recess into closed session.
Yeah, and before we do that, Mario, you could stop recording.
Recording stopped.
Oh, how can I?